Hello again. Today we're going to discuss step 7. Humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. Step 7 is really a challenge to you. The AA Big Book says that no human power could have relieved our alcoholism or our addiction. But it also says God could and would if He were sought. So what are shortcomings? Well, shortcoming is a broad term that includes the character defects you discovered in the previous steps and the things that you do or think that are negative. Those things that are causing you trouble, causing other people trouble, and are just not in God's will for you. Through this process that you've been going through that involves painstakingly looking at all your character defects and shortcomings, it should be dawning on you just how self-centered and selfish you've been. This takes you in the opposite direction of a spiritual life. You should also be recognizing that the 12-step program is not just about overcoming alcoholism or your addiction. It's about becoming a different type of person. So when you begin to develop a spiritual way of living, your thinking changes and your actions change, and you begin to realize why you have been miserable enough to continue drinking or participating in your addiction to get some relief. So the program intends to teach you how to attain more humility, which is the foundation principle of each of the 12 steps. The 12-step program is also about getting to know a higher power. The concept of humility is often misunderstood. Humility includes qualities such as modesty and being meek, deeply respectful, truthful, sincere, and honest about your limitations. It's the opposite of false pride, which is really a form of self-delusion. False pride has been described as a paper-thin mask over rotting features such as arrogance and vanity and conceit. One of the main features of false pride is living by self-knowledge and living as if you are your own higher power. Leading your life with the main objective of satisfying your basic and natural desires ultimately leads to a life of emptiness and discontentment. The problem with this way of living is that there's never enough to satisfy. Well, maybe you thought that if you could gain security, prestige, or perfect romance, that you could reach a great state of happiness. And you may have thought you had well-intentioned motives in a lot of the things that you did, but your lack of humility caused problems. You may have even learned to exhibit honesty and morality when you thought it could get you what you wanted, living for the sole purpose of trying to find more ways to satisfy your urges or desires. It probably never occurred to you that character building, genuine concern for other people, and a relationship with God were goals worth working towards. As long as you continue to try to live by your own strength and intelligence, you undermine any possibility of God working through you in your life. You may have even confused strong religious beliefs with a daily personal relationship with your higher power. As long as you thought you could handle everything, your ego was in charge. Ego is edging God out. I once heard it said that if you don't gain humility, you'll be humiliated. So it may be that it took repeated episodes of pain and humiliation for you to reach the point where you were sick and tired of being sick and tired. When it starts to dawn on you that self-sufficiency isn't working, you may feel frightened and depressed. And when you've had enough pain and misery trying to do things your way, you may be willing to try the 12-step method. So it should be painfully obvious now after working steps 4, 5, and 6 that your character defects and shortcomings are preventing your contentment. And I know that working the steps is uncomfortable and you may be doing it begrudgingly. But you have already figured out that running from pain and problems with alcohol, drugs, or other addictions doesn't work. And it's because of the many years that you've spent in your addiction that you've wound up less emotionally mature than you should be for your age. You have some catching up to do by facing up to your feelings and problems that you've avoided. Some of these things may be very unpleasant to deal with, but once you begin to enjoy some moments of real peace of mind, you'll see how it's worth it. We need to talk more now about your higher power. You recall that step 3 says that we turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Well, maybe you're having trouble believing in God. There are other examples of higher power in the program that you can use right now. For example, would you agree with me that the collective intellectual and spiritual power of your 12-step group is greater than you alone? Can you agree that the collective depth of knowledge and wisdom from all the brains in that room can solve more problems than you can by yourself? Well, that's a clear-cut example of a power greater than yourself, a higher power. Experience has shown that 12-step members who are willing to use their 12-step group as a higher power can begin to work the program. But I'm going to tell you unabashedly that belief in a loving and caring God is where I hope you are headed. As it says in the AA Big Book, no human power can relieve our alcoholism or addiction. According to spiritual teachers, meditation and prayer are the main things that change our soul, our attitude, our thinking, and our lives. You must learn to rely on an infinite God rather than your finite self. And it really doesn't matter if you came into the 12-step program believing in God or not. It only matters that you're willing to choose to believe in God as you understand Him or her, one day at a time. If you don't think it's working, you can always go back to your old belief system. But I want to remind you that living by your own instincts, intellect, and desires without input from God is proven in your life to be a failure. So you can use the as-if method. Act as if there is a God and begin to pray to that God every day. Ask God to repair your broken personality and defective thinking. Pray for God to guide your will and your life. Be willing to believe that God is working to help you find solutions to your problems and difficulties. How much risk is there in trying it this way? Millions of others have found it to be successful. Give it a little time and see what happens. Well, here are some practical things that you can do to work step 7. Start praying humbly every day to have your defects taken away from you. As I told you, it won't happen all at once. You have to do your part too. I'm assuming that you have a sponsor that you've been in contact with almost daily. Without a sponsor, the chances are really very slim that you'll be able to successfully work this program. As shortcomings or character defects arise, I recommend you talk it over with your sponsor as soon as you can and be willing to listen to suggestions from your sponsor about how to handle things. When difficult situations occur during your day, make a concerted effort not to respond the way you used to. For the most part, your old ways just don't work. Ask God right then what to do. If you have to take immediate action, then do so after praying about it and allowing yourself a little time to calm down first. Most situations will not require an immediate response. Your best bet is to pray about it and talk it over with your sponsor before taking any action. You can also get feedback from another seasoned member of your 12-step program, or your therapist, or your physician, or a minister or priest. It's going to take some time for you to learn new ways of responding. With time, though, you'll begin to intuitively know how to handle situations appropriately. I agree with the famous author Thomas Merton when he recommended that you avoid formal praying and instead go directly to God. At the very root of your existence, you are in constant and immediate contact with the infinite power of God. Start putting that power to work for you every day and in every way. Exercise that prayer muscle and see how strong it becomes. But remember that faith is not a feeling. It is a decision that you make. And you have to get up and make that decision all over again every day. That's why it's important to develop the habit of a short spiritual reading, followed by prayer and meditation every morning. Establishing contact with God, the very first thing, sets your course for the entire day. And I guarantee you that if you are applying the suggestions and concepts that you learn by going through each of these 7 steps, you will begin to see how desire and fear have ruled your life. You don't have to go around feeling restless, irritable, and discontented anymore. You'll begin to experience a new freedom and happiness. You'll comprehend the word serenity, and you'll begin to experience some peace. Your whole outlook on life is going to begin to change, and you'll recognize that God is doing for you what you couldn't do for yourself.